She laughed every day. Because she had nothing left to lose, there was a woman who lived at the edge of a small American town. In a modest little house with peeling blue shutters and a porch swing that groaned in rhythm with the wind. Her name was June. She was 82 years old, barely 5 feet tall, and wore the same floppy sun hat, whether it was raining or sunny. People called her that cheerful old gal on the corner, though no one really knew her story. They just knew that she laughed a lot. Loud, belly-deep laughter. The kind that made kids grin and strangers pause. Most folks assumed June was just one of those naturally happy people. A cheerful widow who baked pies and waved at cars. But if anyone had bothered to sit with her for a cup of tea, they'd have discovered something far deeper than cheerfulness. June didn't laugh because she had it easy. She laughed because life had taken nearly everything from her. And somehow, she had found her freedom in that. It started with a goodbye June hadn't always lived in that little blue house. In fact, she once lived in a grand colonial with her husband, Charlie, who sold insurance and always kept his shoes polished. They had 2 kids, a golden retriever, and a life that looked perfect from the outside. Charlie worked long hours. June volunteered at the church. And the kids played Little League and painted birdhouses in the garage. But life has a way of knocking gently before it crashes in. The first knock was when their daughter, Lizzie, got sick. Not the kind of sick you beat with antibiotics. The quiet kind, the slow kind, the kind that steals color from cheeks and sparkle from eyes. By the time anyone realized what was happening, Lizzie was already slipping away. June spent every ounce of herself trying to hold her daughter together with hope and hugs and warm baths. But none of it worked. Charlie stopped coming home early. He couldn't handle the silence. June never blamed him, not really. But when Lizzie passed, the house felt too big, too loud with nothing in it. Charlie turned into a man she didn't recognize. And by the time their son, Adam, went off to college, the 2 of them were living in the same house, but miles apart, losing everything. Slowly, some people lose everything in a single, cruel sweep. A fire, a crash, a diagnosis. For June, it was more like a slow peeling away. A friend moved. Her mother passed. The neighbors changed. Her church closed. Her son called less often. Charlie sat in silence. Every piece of the life she built began to drift away like leaves in late October. Then Charlie died in his sleep. No warning. Just didn't wake up one morning. She sat in that too big house for weeks, surrounded by memories she couldn't hold on to, and plans that no longer made sense. People brought casseroles and condolences, but no one stayed long. That was the worst part, how grief makes you invisible. So one day, she sold the house. She packed only what fit in her old station wagon. No moving van, no ceremony. She drove until she found a house she could afford near a town that felt kind. It had a porch swing and good light in the kitchen. That was enough. The day she started laughing, it didn't happen all at once. The laughter came quietly, like a breeze, through a cracked window. The first time, she was watching a squirrel try to carry an entire piece of pizza up a tree. She laughed so hard, she nearly choked on her tea. It startled her. That laugh didn't feel like the old kind. It wasn't polite. It wasn't the laugh you use when someone tells a joke you've heard before. It was raw and real, and it came from somewhere deep inside her, a place that hadn't made a sound in years. That's when she knew something had shifted. She started laughing more at awkward weather reports, at the way birds waddled, at her own reflection when she wore two different shoes, and it felt good. Not because her life was better, but because, for the first time, she wasn't trying to fix everything. Freedom in letting go. June learned something that many people never do. When you have nothing left to lose, you're finally free to live. She didn't worry about being polite anymore. If she wanted to dance in the grocery store aisle when her favorite song came on, she did. If a memory made her cry, she let the tears fall in public. And if someone needed help, even just someone to talk to, she made time. She started writing letters to her younger self, dozens of them. She'd sit at her kitchen table with a cup of lukewarm coffee and scribble things like, "Don't wait so long to plant that rose bush," or "Say yes to the trip. You can always make more money, but you can't make more time." Sometimes she left those letters in library books for strangers to find. She'd tuck them into the pages and smile, imagining some college kid stumbling on her words. The kids at the fence. It was the kid who noticed her first. A group of middle schoolers who passed her house on their way home from school. At first, they thought she was strange. She wore purple gardening gloves and talked to her tomatoes. But one day, she brought out a basket of lemonade and cookies and said, "You don't have to eat, but they taste better if you do." From then on, they stopped by every few days, at first for cookies, then for stories. June told them about how she once got chased by a goose in high heels, how she kissed her husband on the first date because life felt too short not to, how she once slept in her car in the mountains just to see the stars up close. She never gave them advice, just stories, and sometimes that was enough. Laughter as resistance one spring day. A local news crew came to town to do a feel-good piece about unsung heroes. The camera guy was expecting to meet a community organizer or a war veteran. Instead, he found June on her porch, laughing so hard at a squirrel with a bread bag on its head that she had tears streaming down her face. He asked if he could interview her. She said, "Only if he took off his tie, you'll breathe better," she told him. When the piece aired, people were shocked. She lost a child. Her husband died. She lives alone. She didn't seem like someone who had suffered. That's the thing about resilience. It rarely looks like strength. Most times, it looks like a woman in a floppy hat, laughing at squirrels and baking too many cookies. Just enough. June didn't have much money. Her clothes were second-hand. Her TV barely worked, and her phone still had buttons. But she had enough light in the morning to feel thankful, enough food to share, enough laughter to keep the loneliness away, and enough years behind her to know what matters and what doesn't. She became, without ever planning to, a teacher, not the kind with chalkboards or lectures, but the kind who teaches by living, by showing people that even after the worst things happen, it's still possible to smile, to love, to notice the little things, to laugh simply because you can. They whispered behind her back at the grocery store. There goes Margot again, laughing like life's one long joke. Some meant it kindly, others didn't. But Margot, she never seemed to notice. Or maybe she just didn't care anymore. She'd reached that strange, beautiful place where dignity and freedom shake hands. The place where approval becomes a worn-out coat you hang by the door. And on most days, Margot just wore comfort instead. Asterisk, she wasn't always this way, of course. There were long years, when Margot chased approval like it was oxygen, when her days were filled with careful choices and held in laughter, when she tried to be everything to everyone, and ended up losing herself in the process. It took losing everything she thought she couldn't live without to realize what truly mattered. Her story starts the way many stories do, in a neat little house, on a neat little street where everything seemed just fine from the outside. She was a wife, a mother, a Sunday pie maker, and PTA volunteer. Her laugh was smaller than polite, restrained. The kind of laugh you tuck behind your hand like a secret. The kind of laugh that never shakes the walls. Asterisk, but even in those polished years, she felt that quiet itch of discontent. The way you can live a life that checks all the boxes and still feel a soft ache pressing against your ribs at night. She didn't know what to call it, so she called it tiredness, or maybe selfishness. And like so many women of her generation, she buried it. Right beneath the folded laundry and dinner plans and picket fence expectations, until the day the world cracked, asterisk, her husband left. Not suddenly, but slowly, like leaves falling off a tree in reverse spring. First, his attention, then his kindness, then his presence. The kids grew up, moved out, and grew into people she barely recognized. And one ordinary Tuesday, she stood in her kitchen holding a cup of coffee gone cold and realized she was completely, astonishingly alone. No one told her that silence could be so loud. But here's the twist in Margot's story. She didn't break. Asterisk, she bent. Yes, she wept. She wandered. But then she did something most people don't expect at her age. She started laughing. It started quietly, an unexpected chuckle at an old sitcom rerun. Then, a full-blown snort in line at the DMV when the man in front of her started loudly narrating his entire grocery list. Soon, laughter was the only thing she didn't censor. People noticed. Is she all right? They'd whisper. Been through so much. But Margot would just smile. Because they didn't understand. She wasn't laughing because life was easy. Asterisk, she was laughing because, for the first time, she wasn't pretending anymore, because life had stripped her of the things she thought defined her, and underneath all that rubble, she found something unexpected: herself, raw, real, unadorned, and surprisingly funny. She began to say what she meant. To sit alone at restaurants and order dessert first. She picked wildflowers from strangers' yards and left thank you notes in their mailboxes. She danced in her living room at 7 a.m. in her bathrobe. With the curtains open, people said she was eccentric, and maybe she was. But she was also free. Asterisk, and that kind of freedom, it's rare. Especially in a world that teaches women to shrink as they age. Margot grew louder, warmer, more alive. She began collecting moments instead of things. She started a joy jar where she'd write down one thing a day that made her smile. Warm socks, one note read. The mailman's crooked grin. The way toast smells when it burns just a little. Asterisk, tiny, insignificant things until you realize they're the building blocks of a beautiful life. She met strangers at the park and asked them their life stories. Some talked, some cried. Most thanked her, because there's something healing about being seen by someone who isn't trying to fix you, just witness you. And Margot, in all her wild laughter and soft eyes, had become that person. One day, she met a young woman on a bench outside a library. The girl was crying quietly, shoulders shaking, face buried in her coat. Margot sat beside her. Said nothing at first. Then, after a while, heartbreak. Asterisk. The girl nodded. Margot reached into her oversized bag and pulled out a piece of dark chocolate. No advice, she said, handing it over. Just this. It helps. So does crying and laughing. Not yet, maybe, but one day. The girl smiled through tears, and Margot laughed softly this time. The kind of laugh that says, I've been there. I survived because she had, and that's. What made her laughter so powerful wasn't naive. It wasn't denial. It was defiance, a joyful rebellion against bitterness, a daily act of resilience, a choice. Margot began hosting what she called porch evenings every Thursday in the summer. No invitations, no RSVP, just an old swing, a chipped pitcher of lemonade, and a sign that read, Sit, breathe, talk if you want, laugh if you can. At first, no one came. Asterisk. But one evening, the retired bus driver from down the street showed up. Then the widowed schoolteacher. Then a quiet teenager with headphones and a skateboard. Before long, her porch buzzed with mismatched chairs, shared silences, and stories spilled into twilight. She didn't lead the gatherings. She didn't try to fix anyone's sadness. She just made space for it. And sometimes, in between the stillness, laughter would risen forced. Unashamed, Margot believed laughter was like a match in the dark. You didn't need a lot of it, just enough to see the next step. It's funny, when you live with almost nothing, you start to see how much you really had all along. Margot began to treasure things no one else noticed. The sound of wind through dry grass, the weight of her cat on her chest as she napped, the fact that her knees still worked most days. She laughed at the aches. Too. Asterisk. Oh, you again, she'd say to her back pain. Shuffling to the cupboard for Advil. Guess we're doing this today. She made peace with her body, even as it changed. Wrinkles, yes. Sags, sure. But this body had carried children. It had carried grief. It had danced, fallen, healed. It had been a home, and now it was hers again. Fully, without apology. There was something radical about the way she stopped hiding. One day, a friend asked her, "Aren't you afraid? Being alone, growing old?" And Margot, after a pause, just smiled. I was. For a long time, but now, I think I'm more afraid of missing what's right in front of me. She wasn't chasing youth anymore, or approval, or the next big thing. She had traded striving for savoring. Asterisk, and somehow, in doing so, she had more joy than she'd ever known. She kept a notebook by her bed. Not for goals, for gratitudes. Every night, she'd write one thing she loved about the day. One night, the way my tea steamed in the sunlight. Another, laughed so hard I snorted twice. And once, did absolutely nothing and didn't feel guilty. She realized that peace wasn't something you bought or waited for. Peace was something you noticed. And joy was something you invited in like an old friend, even if it just stayed for a minute. Sometimes people asked her how she got there, how she became this vibrant, laughing, contented woman after all she'd lost. And Margot would say the same thing every time. I stopped thinking life owed me anything, and I started treating every good moment like a miracle. Because the truth was, she'd lost almost everything once, and somehow that had freed her. There was no more pretending, no more proving. Asterisk, just presence. And in that presence, she found the kind of happiness that doesn't shout or shine. The quiet kind, the steady kind, the kind that hums underneath even the hardest days, the kind that lets you laugh even when nothing's funny, even when everything hurts. Especially then, she became a regular at the community center, not because she needed the meals or the bingo, but because she loved the people. She knew everyone's name, their dogs, their coffee orders. She hugged often, touched shoulders when she spoke, listened like it mattered, because it did. One winter, a man named Hank sat beside her in the library and whispered, "I don't think anyone would notice if I was gone." Asterisk, she didn't tell him he was wrong. She didn't try to talk him out of the dark. She just reached into her coat, pulled out a granola bar, and said, "Well, I'd miss sharing snacks with you." Then she laughed, not loudly, not carelessly, just enough to warm the space between them. Hank came back the next day, and the one after. Sometimes healing starts there in the space where sorrow and silliness meet. Margot had become a soft place in the world. A living reminder that it's never too late to begin again. And that laughter, when born from survival, can be the holiest sound on earth. She kept living, kept laughing. Asterisk, through birthdays with fewer candles and friends who moved away or moved on. She cried, too. Of course she did, but she never let the sadness steal her ability to marvel at the little things. Grief and joy, she'd say, aren't opposites. They're dance partners. She taught that to anyone who'd listen, especially the young ones who visited her porch. One college student, lost in post-grad confusion, asked her, "What do you do when you don't know what to do?" Margot sipped her tea, then said softly, "Start with joy. The smallest kind. Follow it. Let it lead you somewhere." It sounded simple. It was. That was her secret. Years passed. The porch paint peeled. Her joints stiffened. The laughter lines deepened into creases of a life well worn. But Margot stayed the same, in spirit, showing up. Still laughing, still pouring lemonade into mismatched glasses, and saying, "There's always enough." One autumn, a young journalist came to interview her. "A local story about inspiring seniors," he said. Margot chuckled. "If you call sitting on a porch inspiring, you need more excitement in your life." I asked questions. What's the key to happiness? What regrets do you have? What advice would you give to the younger generation? She paused before answering, then said softly, "Don't wait until life breaks you to learn how to live. But if it does, don't be afraid to start again. You'll be lighter." He looked at her, confused. "Lighter," she said, tapping her heart. "When you lose what you thought mattered, you realize what actually does. And it's never things. It's never what the world told you. It's always," he scribbled notes furiously, trying to capture something that couldn't quite be captured. When he asked about her regrets, she looked out at the trees. "I regret not laughing more when I was young. I thought everything was so serious. Turns out, the world spins just fine without our worry." She smiled. "And also, I regret every time I kept love to myself." "Say it. Show it. You'll never regret that." He nodded, then asked if he could take her photo. She agreed, but only if she could wear her ridiculous, oversized yellow hat. "I want to look like I'm celebrating something," she joked. "What are you celebrating?" She looked straight at the camera. "Today." One morning, she woke up with a heaviness in her chest, not emotional this time, but real. The doctor confirmed what she suspected. Her heart was weakening. Nothing sudden. Just the slow, steady winding down of a clock that had ticked through nearly 9 decades. Margot didn't cry. She didn't panic. She just sat in the parking lot afterward, let the sunlight warm her face, and whispered, "All right, old friend. Let's make these last steps count." She got her affairs in order, gave away what little she had, but more than that, she gave people her time, her stories, her forgiveness. She made sure no one in her life would wonder how she felt about them. She told them over coffee, on the porch, in handwritten notes. Some were awkward. Some wept. All were grateful. She even reached out to her daughter, Emily, whom she hadn't spoken to in 7 years after a bitter falling out. She called. There was silence. Then a choked "Mom." Margot simply said, "I'm tired of silence. If you'll have me, I'd like to come for tea." She did. They talked. They didn't solve everything, but they laughed, and that laughter worn and wobbly and tear-streaked was enough. It was everything in the final season of her life. Margot became a little quieter, a little slower, but never bitter, never afraid. She sat in the park more often, watching children play. She told strangers they looked beautiful. She hugged longer. Asterisk, she still laughed at the squirrels, at the weather, at herself. One evening, she invited her closest friends over and made a simple request. When the time comes, don't wear black. Don't whisper, she grinned. Tell my stories, tell your own, and if you can, laugh loudly, like I'm still here. They promised, and when she passed peacefully in her sleep, wrapped in a soft quilt and the faint scent of lilac, they honored her wish. The town threw a porch party in her name. People brought lemonade, wore yellow, and took turns sitting on her swing. They read the notes she had left for each of them. Notes like, asterisk, you taught me that friendship doesn't need to be complicated. Thank you. I loved your laugh. Keep using it. You mattered to me. I hope I mattered to you. And one final note, pinned to the porch door for everyone to see. If you're reading this, you've lived long enough to lose something. Don't let that loss steal your light. Laugh today. Laugh anyway. Laugh because you can. And if you've got nothing left to lose, baby, you've got everything to gain. To our viewers, Sif, this story found you at just the right moment. Stay for a while. Let Margot's journey remind you. It's never too late to begin again. It's never too late to forgive, to laugh, to live more slowly, but more deeply, and maybe to let go of what no longer serves you. If you felt something, even just a little spark drop, a comment, a koza, what part of Margot's story stayed with you? Or share a piece of your own. We read every word. Asterisk, we make these stories to connect heart to heart with people like you. People who are searching for meaning, for healing, for something honest and warm. So, if that's you, subscribe. Join our little circle of listeners who believe in stories that soothe the soul. Until next time, stay soft, stay curious. And if you can laugh, even if it's just a little, even if no one else hears it, because laughter is proof you're still here, and that, dear friend, is a beautiful thing. Years after Margot passed, her porch still stood. The house was sold to a young couple, kind and quiet, with a baby girl and a dog named Honey. They hadn't known Margot, but they kept her swing, repainted it sky blue, and placed a small plaque beside the door. It read, "She laughed every day because she had nothing left to lose." Neighbors still walked by and smiled. Some would pause, run their hands along the porch rail. And remember, Margot had become something larger than life, not because she was grand, but because she was real. She had been there in grief, in laughter, in forgiveness, and in being there for herself and others. She had shown them the way through their own darkness. Children who had once received her candy and giggles grew up and told their kids stories about the porch lady. Teens she had encouraged now worked in clinics, schools, art studios, many of them still carrying her notes in their wallets like quiet armor. And Emily, her daughter, visited every year on the anniversary of her mother's passing. She brought tea and yellow daisies. She sat on the swing, rocked gently, and whispered updates about her life. "I got married again, Mom. Someone good this time, patient, kind. Lily, my daughter is turning 10. She's loud like you, and funny. I wish we had more time, but I'm so glad we had the time we did." And once she whispered through tears, "I finally understand. You weren't running from the pain. You were running toward life. I see that now. Thank you for showing me how." Years passed, generations shifted, but somehow the story of Margot kept finding its way into people's lives. It was passed down not as a tale of tragedy, but as one of transformation. A woman broken, who chose not to stay broken. A woman stripped of everything, who found joy in what remained. A woman alone, who chose connection anyway. One day, a group of school children gathered for a local storytelling day on the porch. An older teacher who had once been a boy, Margot told to chase bees and kindness, stood and read aloud her final letter to the town. "My dear friends, if you're holding this paper, it means I'm gone in body but not in spirit. Let me leave you with this. Life will hurt you. It's not a threat. It's a promise. But what you do after, that's where the story begins. Laugh through the tears. Dance with the ache. Love even if your heart has known loss. Because when you've got nothing left to lose, you're free. Free to be foolish. Free to be brave. Free to be beautifully, unapologetically yourself. I hope you choose joy even when it feels small. I hope you choose kindness even when it's quiet. Okay. And I hope, most of all, you never forget you are here, and that is enough. With love, always, Margot." The children were silent. Then one small voice, barely louder than a bird's flutter, whispered, "She sounds like someone who really lived." And the teacher smiled. She did. And now, so can you. Epilogues. Sometimes stories don't end. They echo in a shared laugh, in a yellow scarf worn in memory, in the way someone dares to forgive, in the moment someone dances in the rain without caring who watches. Margot, lived a small life by the world's standards. No fame, no riches, no statues carved in her name. But what she left behind, that was the truest kind of legacy. A legacy of being human fully, bravely, and with laughter even when it hurt. So, if you found yourself here, reading her story, carrying even a flicker of her spirit in your heart, you are part of that legacy now. Let it live on in you. From the creator's desk to our dear viewers, thank you for staying through to the end of this story. She laughed every day because she had nothing left to lose is a tribute to all who have known hardship and still chose joy. It's for the quiet warriors, the porch sitters, the ones who smile through scars. If Margot reminded you of someone in your life, for maybe even yourself, we invite you to share that in the comments. Let this be a circle of warmth, a place where gentle souls find each other. Please like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who might need it today. And if you ever feel like life has stripped everything away, remember Margot. Remember that laughter is not denial. It's defiance. It's hope. Even when you feel empty, you are still here, and that is where healing begins.